Hi, in my previous video we took a look at how Medtronics had supposedly opened up the designs for their ventilator and how, well, it wasn't really of much value to most people. Probably the only major benefit to it was that they actually opened their specifications, which is not really of any value for any like short-term project. We need a ventilator now. It's not probably not going to help you a huge amount, but it could be of value to those who want to do like a ventilator project like long-term, take it seriously, spend the many years required to engineer it properly, then get it FDA approved, blah blah blah, all the rest of it. So, you know, still a credit to Medtronics for that. But of course they didn't really release anything else like PDF schematics, and that was, you know, about all she wrote. But they did, there was some vague promise to actually release the source code for this. Now, that's all they mentioned at the time. Now, as it turns out, we'll go through an update for this and then we'll talk about other open source ventilator projects, because there's this awesome list of and the status for other open source ventilator projects. So anyway, as it turns out, they have updated the web page, the open files web page here. This wasn't here before. More documents and source code files pertaining to the PB560 ventilator system will be available soon. That wasn't there when I put mine. So I can't help but think that they have seen my video and other criticism around about their release of these supposed, you know, these specifications and things, and they've acted to release more stuff. And to their credit, they have actually released more things. But unfortunately, that page link that I had, that thank you page where you could download the files directly, it looks like they've shut that off. So you do actually have to register here, and you have to read and agree with the permissive license. Now, let's talk about this for a minute, because if you're thinking about starting an open source ventilator project or some other, even if it's a commercial ventilator project, and you use this as a baseline, as generous as it is of Medtronics to actually release their specifications, and as we'll see, I believe they'll release the CAD files, the KeyCAD files, and other like the 3D mechanical stuff, and I think bill of materials, as somebody said. I haven't looked at it yet, but apparently they have released a ton of stuff to potentially make an equivalent compatible product to their PB560 ventilator. So, but to get it, you have to agree to this permissive license. So I would be very wary of starting any open source project or any commercial project based on this, unless you have really top quality lawyers vet this permissive license agreement. Because if you go in here, and the major one right here, modified permissive license, limited term, this permissive license is effective from the time you download the design materials and software until the earlier of the final day of the WHO's PHEIC is in effect. I assume that means like it's they've declared it a pandemic. Once they stop declaring it a pandemic, then this permissive license ends, i.e. your license to this material ends. Or B, October 1st, 2024. So it's the earlier of those two things. So even if it's still a pandemic in 2024, it will end. You potentially won't be able to sell or even build your ventilators based on this design after it's not declared a pandemic or the term ends. Now, to be fair, Medtronics may not enforce that, but it seems like this permissive license is there. So if you download this information and their lawyers even think that you've copied any aspect of their design or specifications or whatever it is, they can potentially sue you. Okay, you're leaving yourself wide open. So yeah, while this is a generous move on the part of Medtronics, I'd be very careful about this. So if there's any lawyers out there, please let us know how potentially, troublesome this could be. And it says right here, you have the license during these time periods that we've talked about to actually make and sell a ventilator, either partially or wholly, based on the information that they've provided in response to this pandemic crisis. So once it's not a pandemic anymore, it's like, maybe you should stop selling it or stop producing, and what effect that has on open source hardware. Like, you can't just take their information and then open source it and put whatever open source hardware license on it you want, and then think that then it becomes magically free. It doesn't. Medtronics still have the right to this information. You've agreed to use this license. So technically, I don't even think that would be applicable under the open source hardware license. So please correct me if I'm wrong. It's been a while since I've looked at the ins and outs of the various open source hardware licenses, and even the official certified one. I don't think it would actually be possible to make a ventilator and call it open source hardware if you got the information from this Medtronics documents. And then if you use the software for anything else, you're screwed. But they can't revoke it until the end of that day, until the pandemic finishes or the end of that date. And they're saying here, your sale or distribution of your ventilator is conditioned upon your attaining all required regulatory approvals in each country. So if you're looking, as many of these projects are that we'll see in a minute, are looking at doing like a makeshift, open source ones that are just all out there, like, technically, this license does not give you the ability to do that. The distribution of your ventilator, if you actually sell the hardware, doesn't stop you releasing the information to build it, I would presume. Correct me if I'm wrong, lawyers. But if you want to distribute it or sell it, even if you want to give it away for free, that's distribution. That's not, and if you don't get regulatory approval, it's not covered. So I don't see how, technically, in theory, any information that Medtronics has released is conducive to producing ventilators that we need right now. So if all these teams working on these quick, a couple of month development cycles to try and get ventilators out there, sort of these makeshift ventilator projects out there, you can't get FDA approval that quickly, or you maybe could if you're, who is it, Mercedes-Benz and the other huge companies that are working on ventilators. Maybe you can get them to approve it, but yeah, good luck if your little, hackerspace project or something like that produces something useful. Technically, not according to this license, you can't use it. And also, you must provide a link to this license in your open source ventilator design and things like that. Of course, that's just a regular part of it, but yeah, you have to link to this so that people using your project know that there's an expiry date on this license. After that, the lawyers can come and suck your blood. And you have to provide this message as well. Geez, it's like, okay, they're really going to town telling you what you can and can't do with this information that they've generously provided. Now, call me cynical, but my spidey sense is telling me that they don't quite have the community and industry's best interests at heart here. I think they have their bottom line corporate interests at heart here. But once again, it's a good move to release this. I'm just saying, be very careful about this license. And now, whilst I'm not a cynic, but there could be people out there who might think that the release of this information is could potentially be related to some bad press they got about recently in the New York Times about how the US tried to build a new fleet of ventilators, but the mission failed. And if we search for Medtronic down here, we go down here. So I'll link this article down below. You can read it for yourself. I won't get into all the details. I might get a couple of details wrong here. But basically, like I think almost a decade ago or something, the US government put out this contract to produce an emergency stock of ventilators because, they knew, a lot of people knew that this pandemic was inevitable, right? And we might have, having a strategic stockpile of ventilators was a good thing. So the government was actually forward thinking in that aspect. And apparently the first contract fell through or something, but then they started over and awarded a new contract for $13 million to Philips. But in 2015, Coviden, who got the contract, was sold for $50 billion to Medtronics. And the CFO is saying he did not know why the contract had fallen apart. I am not aware of this issue. And they're saying like people involved had no recollection of the project and contract and things like that. Anyway, Medtronics, to be fair, are claiming that it wouldn't have met specifications anyway. But apparently a contract was awarded and Medtronics took that company over and they haven't produced any ventilators. So anyway, I don't know the details of that. LinkedIn down below. Now, I'll download these new files in a minute and take a look, but I just wanted to point out this. Thank you. I forget who sent it to me. Someone who's working on a open source ventilator sent this. It's a public Google document, analysis of the various open source pandemic ventilator projects. And I've heard from people on Twitter that this is not a complete list. Look at them all, right? There is a I don't know, how many is that? That is a lot, right? That is a lot of projects here, and they've ranked them. So well done to Robert L. Reed, Kashin Patel, and Juan E. Perez. Sorry, I'm butchering that. Who've compiled this list. I assume it's ongoing. Absolutely fantastic. Date last evaluated. There you go. And they've given like ratings to each project of what progress they're at and things like that, how open they are, the buildability, the community support, functional testing that they've done, reliability testing, whether or not it's actually suitable to this current crisis, whether or not it's clinician friendly, and average score. But it looks like the best one up here, look, they've ranked it here, eevBLAB seems to be the best one, but there's another low-cost open source one, Ventilator. Anyway, I'll link this in down below, and they've put notes over here. Claims will be made open source, extremely impressive documentation shown privately and things like that, but there is no shortage of these projects. So if you've got the skills to work on these projects, in particular, people who have skills in ventilator design, CPAP, which is a similar sort of, it's similar sort of technology, I guess, CPAP masks and things like that, and other medical type devices. I mean, guys like me with like hardware and firmware skills and stuff are like dime a dozen. But no, if you want to contribute, if you have really like real specific skills in ventilator design and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm sure have a look through these projects and find one that suits your fancy, and by all means contact them and contribute to this. So hats off to that list. Absolutely fantastic. So here it is. I submitted the information. I confirmed that I abide by their license agreement, and whether or not this is it, be sure to check back soon. They're going to say there's going to be more. But looks, this is the original one that we looked at, and this is a new one, 287 meg. Ventilator system includes manufacturing fixtures. Printed circuit board drawings include multiple bombs. Okay, so that's the bombs for the PCB, but really, as I said, this is like a 90% mechanical project. So if you don't have the bomb for all the motors and the filters and the other widgets, valves and things that are used inside all the pumps and all the mechanisms and stuff like that, it's once again, it's not of huge use, really. 3D CAD files, maybe for the case, mechanical part drawings. Okay, well, we'll see what they've got, and the permissive license, of course. All right, let's have a look at what we've got. Electronics PCB assemblies, power management. Let's go for the CPU PCB assembly. I believe somebody said they were KiCad. Oh, this is nice. We've got the oxygen valve hardware specification, relief valve, exhalation control valve. Oh, that could be nice. Okay. We didn't have that before. Oxygen valve. This looks good. Oh, wait, it's pretty old. But there's the specifications for the oxygen valves. Okay, this is really good. But once again, subject to the license. So, yeah, but how do you... Okay, it's the specification, but, like, can you buy it? Like, I assume it's a custom thing, is it? No, Switzerland. No, it looks like a Folsa. Folsa in Switzerland. I assume that's a company that makes these. There you go. Is that the part number? If that's the case, beauty. If you can get like all the sensors and stuff off the shelf, that's absolutely fantastic. Well done, Medtronics. So there you go. But once again, if you download this information, you agree to that license. Theory of operation for the exhalation valve, de-energized position, technology valve. Yeah, like, I don't know. I'm not a mechanical engineer. I don't know what I'm looking at here, really. I'm just going to botch it up if I try and do anything. But that, the life of the valve, once again, fluid automation systems. There you go. That's looks like that's who they buy it from. So it looks like off-the-shelf stuff. Beauty. PCB specifications. Oh, AC is alternating current. Love it. So yeah, I've been there, done that. written these documents, display interface all the time in diagrams, the oxygen sensor, I assume FI is flow in oxygen or something. Yeah, so you know, some nice specs there. There's their full fabrication drawing for the PCB, nice. And here are all the files in the PCB, non-plated through their Gerbers board. There we go. Okay, that looks like a .pro. That's a KiCad project file, maybe. Let me try and load it. Now, I tried to load it. Unfortunately, it gives me, like it gave me a file error message or whatever. So maybe these aren't KiCad files. So I opened the .pro file and aha, CR5000 board designer version 13. That is Zuken. So that's the package that they used. I don't have that. Sorry, so I'm unable to load them up. But I assume that it looks like the whole shebang. It's got the board file and everything. So yeah, it looks like they have released the CAD files for the PCB. No wuckers. Manufacturing fixtures. Plastic tube cutter. Look, that's their tool. These are their manufacturing tools. This is actually really quite good. Like, hats off once again. Stopcock. I want a good stopcock. There you go. Demonetized. Like battery plate assembly or something like that. I don't know. Yeah, it's all there. It looks like they're releasing all of the info for their entire manufacturing thing of this. Okay, these are the 3D CAD models. There's a solid part. I assume that's SolidWorks. Sorry, I don't have a SolidWorks license, but look at them all, right? That is all their stuff. They have genuinely released the whole lot. Now with it seems like off-the-shelf sensors and everything, and valves and all that sort of stuff, and all the PCB files, it looks like somebody could actually manufacture this 560 ventilator. So that's fantastic. So yeah, really, once again, I'll say it multiple times, hats off to Medtronics. But beware of the license. And no doubt their heart's in the right place, right? We need more ventilators due to this crisis. Here it is. But really, how long is it going to take somebody to take all this information, and with no employees from the company, like everyone has to learn all this stuff and then actually produce the finished PB560 ventilator? It'd be easier just if they, just kept churning out the 560 regulators themselves. I mean, it's great, but the fact that that license is so restrictive that then potentially prevents other people from actually, coming out with products that can be potentially used beyond this pandemic, because it could end in 6 months. They could stop, pandemic over, license boom is revoked, technically revoked for this thing, and you've completely kamikaze. And all that effort you've put into manufacturing that new ventilator, just boom, can stop just like that. Otherwise they could sue you out of existence potentially. I for one welcome our new Medtronics overlords. Let's go into the mechanical part drawing. Wow, that's a lot of subdirectories. You got to go into the part number, supporting documentation. Like, what is it? What's an ICR? Like, oh, look, yeah, okay. They've got this is a thing that you should do with your projects. When you have like a project folder that you're working on, right? You include all your PCB files and your source code and everything else you might have in there. Include the data sheets as well. Is a really handy thing. Because file space is cheap these days, right? And it's free, right? So just copy in the data sheets. It's really handy. So you've always got them if they just magically vanish, like in 10 years time or something. I know everything's supposed to be around forever on the interwebs, but things can vanish. So that's really cool. That's all the mechanical stuff for every single part, and presumably every mechanically type part they've got in this thing, and I presume they had 3D models for the case and things like that and everything. So I'm going to call it that it's all here. It seems to be all here, but they still haven't released the software. So if you race out and build your Medtronics 560 ventilator right now, I'd wait until they at least release the software before you actually do that. Anyway, there you go. That is fantastic. So anyway, I'm quite impressed that Medtronics did follow through and have released all of the stuff. Looks like all the stuff required. You'd have to spend days going through everything to make sure that everything's there and things like that. So to produce this 560 ventilator, except the software. But I have no doubts if they've released all this, I would actually believe that they're going to release the software. Maybe they're busy. Once again, somebody very cynically said on Twitter or forum or somewhere or YouTube comments that they're probably busy. They can't release the software yet because they're busy scrubbing out all the stuff that they don't want you to see inside the thing. And I won't speculate as to what that is. You can speculate down in the comments down below. But anyway, yes, hats off to Medtronics for doing this. My only concern with this is this license. Please, lawyers, have a look into this, but it seems if you agree to this, that's what you're agreeing to. You're agreeing to the limited term. And I think, please correct me if I'm wrong, that they're essentially saying that you cannot open source this thing. So, I don't know. Anyway, yep, they at least came through. Hopefully that had something to do with my video actually prodding them to do that. There you go. If you liked the video, please give it a big thumbs up. As always, comments in the YouTube comments or over on the EEVblog forum down below. Catch you next time.